Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from YourBlackWorld.com. You know that I have a tremendous amount of admiration for Dr. Juwanza Kunjufu, whom I consider to be the foremost authority on the development and education of black youth. He's not just an educator, he is a well-educated individual and an empowered individual who has a lot of important knowledge that if you haven't become aware of this, I think you should go out and become aware of it, and you should definitely check out his books. Dr. Kunjufu has honored me with some time to talk about his latest book, and it's called Changing School Culture for Black Boys. And I've got Dr. Kunjufu on the line. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing real well, Boyce, and we have a mutual admiration for each other because I truly respect your work, not only in the area of economics, but politics and cultural development and education, the work you're doing with regards to media, keeping us informed. I mean, if anyone has created a 27-hour day where you start in New York, end up in L.A., you have truly found a way to get as much out of the day as possible. So I really respect the great work that you're doing.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I have to. I tell people every chance I get that, that if I didn't have an individual like yourself to look up to, individuals like Reverend Jackson and Minister Farrakhan, all of whom are right there in Chicago, there's no way I'd be the that I am because, as you know, as a fellow PhD in business, the people with degrees like the ones that we have are told to do other things with their lives. They're kind of extracted from their communities. And seeing you come back to your community and not just say that I'm a proud black man, but to say I'm a proud black man working for black people and black boys and men and et cetera. I mean, that I think it really creates a pathway, almost like walking through the woods and having somebody clear the path for you. So I appreciate your work. Now, I want to ask you about your latest book. You mentioned that book to me, and the title was intriguing, and I'm definitely going to buy a copy. Can you tell me what was the purpose behind writing this book, and what were you seeking to achieve with it?
Well, what's unfortunate, I'm a consultant to school districts, and when they bring me in primarily for some isolated reasons. They'll bring me in because they have a disproportionate percentage of black boys in special ed. For example, 41% of the special ed children are African American, and yet we're only 17% of the students. And boys, what's even worse is that if a black child is placed in special ed, 80% of the time it's the male child. Or they'll bring me in because of the suspensions. For some reason, 1 of every 6 black boys are suspended, while it's 1 of every 14 for Hispanics and 1 of every 20 for white students. Or they'll bring me in because their dropout rate is unacceptable. And the dropout rate for African American males reported by the Schott Foundation is close to 48 to 50%. Only 12% of black boys are proficient in reading by 8th grade, and over 45% of the children retained in 4th grade are African Americans. And if an African American child is retained, over 70% of the time it's the black male. So when they bring me in, they want me to look at an isolated issue. But I think this is much deeper than just reading or suspension or special ed. The problem is that our boys are going to school. They're in a culture that does not nurture them. And as you know, since we have a deep admiration, a mutual admiration for Chicago, how is it that urban prep in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city, if not the country, Inglewood, before urban prep was created 6 years ago, the only high school there was Harper High School, with a graduation rate of only 35%. Urban prep can then go into that same neighborhood and literally for the past 4 years, 100% acceptance of their graduates in the 4-year colleges. So, see, what schools try to do is that they try to convince me that the reason for the problem is because the boys are black, they're low income, from a single-parent home. There's nothing wrong with black children. There's nothing wrong with black males if they can be nurtured in an environment where they're given high expectations, where the teachers understand their learning styles, and they increase time on task.
Mm. That's really interesting because, that story you described, I honestly believe that God exposed me to every side of the fence so that I could speak intelligently on these issues. And I remember going through school, and I remember how horrible my grades were. I'm talking about E's and F's on every report card. I remember teachers telling my mother that I had hyperactive attention deficit disorder, whatever they call it. They wanted her to put me on medication. They didn't think I was as smart as the other kids. I remember being in school and being lost, and literally, I was not as intelligent, and being treated like a deviant made me want to behave like a deviant. And so it's kind of this interesting self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you're a parent,
Boyce, I want to stay with that. So, what year did you have a turnaround, and what inspired this change in your behavior and performance?
You know what did it? I never had a turnaround in the public school system. I literally left high school as a senior. I got an English happiest days of my life because that meant that I was actually able to graduate. That's how abysmal my high school performance was. What would happen was every now and then I would have these sparks of brilliance. In the 7th grade I had an F in math, but one time I got a little extra help. Somebody helped me study for the math test, and I got the highest score in the whole 7th grade. And my teachers were floored because I was not the quote-unquote smart kid. And I think that what really flipped me over was being 18 years old. I had a baby on the way. I got into all kinds of stuff. And I just realized that if I wanted to be a father to my child, I had to have some kind of education. So what I did was actually literally I applied what I'd learned from sports to studying. In sports you learn to work consistently toward a goal, and that's what I did academically. And before I knew it, I started to do well, and it really blew my mind because everything about academic achievement that had been so mystical to me, it was entirely demystified at that point, and it's what leads me to sort of spread this gospel that all of us can do it. So that was
it's amazing. Your story sounds like our mutual friends like Les Brown and Ben Carson.
Really interesting.
Yeah. And the other thing you mentioned with regards to sports, again, it's something else we have in common. I ran track in high school and in college, and as strong as my father was in my life, it was at Harlan High School right there in Chicago on 96 in Michigan, where I had the best track coach in the country. We won city and state from 66 to 70, and he had us run from 3 o'clock to 6 almost every day. And he said, if you're tired, we're exhausted. And then he said, now the workout will begin. Anybody can run when they're fresh. Can you run when you're tired? So like you said, sometimes as a coach is athletic to sports, they can make a tremendous difference in a young man's life.
That's so interesting you say that because I actually ran track too.
Is that right?
that was my sport. I was captain of the track team. I wasn't as good as you now. We didn't win state, but we were, but I like a lot of young black men, I identified myself as an athlete. Yeah, so what I did was I literally over time learned that your athletic ability can merge with your academic ability, because all it comes down to is hard work and persistence and setting a goal and going after it. And if you look at a lot of these brothers that are achieving amazing things athletically, those skill sets, I think, can be applied to a lot of things.
Exactly. And as you know, Boyce, if only 28% of our children have their fathers in the home and only 1% of America's teachers are African-American male, then there's a very good chance he will not see a man at home. He will not see a man in the classroom. But if he could have a male, and in this case, a black male coach that can be his mentor, that's the first step. But secondly, like in my situation, if you're running from 3 o'clock to 6, then you have very little chance to join a gang to get in trouble. I mean, the best you can do is drag yourself home to do your homework, eat, and go to bed and do it again the next day. So again, it gives you a sense of discipline, like you said, and it also coordinates a schedule for you that you can use for the rest of your life in terms of time management.
Wow, I love it. And I agree with you also on that point. I think, and this leads to my next question, I feel that, Dr. Kunjufu, that we really need black men to do all that we can to teach our boys to become men. I think that, what their mothers do is wonderful, beautiful, heroic on its own. but I think all of us as men have an obligation to, because black men, in my opinion, have been just obliterated by the prison industrial complex, the economic issues, and all these other things. And so, I don't think that we're at our best in terms of doing what we can do to nurture our boys the way that we should. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, how do you draw that line between empowering black forward versus, beating up on black men for the areas where we could do better? I mean, what are your thoughts in that area?
Well, a couple of things. One, when I preach around the country, like on Men's Day or Father's Day or something like that, the men are quick to tell me, please give us a good word, since the gospel means good news. I mean, the last thing I think a preacher or a speaker should do in front of a male audience like that is to beat up on them and talk about negative stats. And that's why, for example, in the film that you and I participated in, Hoodwinked, there's some good stats coming out of that. Now, granted, we have more males in prison than we should. Let's say it's 841,000. But as you and I know, there are 1.4 million African-American males in college. And for some reason, the media does not want to give us that information. They love dwelling on the fact that we have a large number of men in prison, but they are silent on the number of men who are in college.
Wow.
Or listen to this, boys. There are almost 400,000 African-American males who are single-parent fathers. The mother left, he stayed. And the media doesn't say anything about that one either.
Yeah, you won't. That will not make the 6 o'clock news. We know that. With you. I mean, you see guys like John Thomas, a player, working very hard to promote fatherhood. Even Dwayne Wade with Miami Heat wrote a book on fatherhood. I agree with you. I think those messages are very important because what it does is it humanizes black men. I think that we have a society that sees black men as something less than human. Like somehow we love our children less than white people, or that we just choose and want to engage in criminal behavior because that's just who we are. And I think that these positive messages have to get there as well. And so with that said, I want to ask you, you wrote a book about the conspiracy to destroy black boys. Is there a conspiracy to destroy black men and black boys? I mean, so, what is the nature of this conspiracy? I mean, what's your perception on that?
Well, when I wrote the first volume in 1982, I believed it then and I believe it now. I don't think it's an accident. If you live in a world controlled by white men, and we do, then the greatest threat to white men is not going to come from other women. It's going to come from other men, especially the men with the most color. And so the greatest threat to white male supremacy would be young black males. And the best way to destroy a black male is destroy him early. And as you know, since you've read these various volumes, I believe then and now that the most critical grade is 4th grade. But I never knew, boys, that governors were going to pimp me like this, and they are now governors who determine prison growth based on 4th grade reading scores. When I wrote the conspiracy books, my objective was to hopefully inspire people to become 4th grade male teachers, to intervene on behalf of black boys and teach them how to read. I mean, I never imagined that people were going to look at the 4th grade syndrome and determine prison growth versus providing these boys with programs like mentoring and rites of passage and literacy that would turn them around.
Well, I love the direction that you go with your work, and you've been doing this for a long time. For what I understand, 40 years now, and it inspires the heck out of me. I mean, I just this morning or the afternoon, I had lunch with 2 young black men that I'm related to. They're about to start college, and the first thing I had to really talk to them about is being your own man and being a leader and the value of education. And understanding that, some of these cultural influences that are sprinkled on us as black men are entirely destructive. And unfortunately for so many men, they all they have to do is turn on the radio, and they will receive at least 4 or 5 toxic messages in the first 60 seconds of a lot of songs they hear. Go out, stay high and drunk as much as possible, go kill another black man, all these other things. And I think it's a lot of work. I mean, I feel that right now with black men, we are under siege. I think we are at war. And I think that we have to be serious about what's happening to our boys. So I appreciate your work.
Well, see, boys, that's why I think that the email that you send out from Black World daily to us is so important. Because let me just say this. When you describe sitting down with two of your relatives and having a mentoring session, what I envision with that is that on the 9 or 10 o'clock news tonight, if that could have been the lead story, a strong, accomplished black man like yourself, allocating time to meet with two young males and give them a sense of direction. I just believe, boys, that if we have ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox, if we have these 4 stations, if one of them could have positive news. See, I'm not convinced that the larger community wants to see violence each and every night. I like to believe that if one of the networks provided positive news, that their ratings would be competitive. And see, I believe that if more people could have seen what you did with those 2 young men, it would inspire them to do that themselves. See, today good things are happening in Black America. It's just the media doesn't cover them. And see, boys, that's one of the reasons why I'm just as energetic in 2013 is when I started in 39 years ago in 1974. I'm just as energetic, if not more so, because I try to connect with people like you. I try to look at the positive. And the other thing, just like you and I have the similarity with regards to not only Afrocentricity but economics, but if the gospel means good news, the last thing I'm going to do is to, quote unquote, be frustrated like Du Bois and die a bitter man.
Well, I love it. I think it's extraordinary. And, I want people to support you. I want people to buy this book. I want people to buy all your books. And, everybody listening, that's my little endorsement. You've got to check out Dr. Kunjufu's work. It will save a life. If you have a black male in your life, he needs to know about Dr. Kunjufu before he learns about Barack Obama, before he learns about George Washington. He needs to know about this work because my argument is that if you have a black boy in this country, he's under attack from the day he comes out of your womb, so you must prepare him to be an intellectual. So Dr. Kunjufu, I'll let you get the last word, sir.
Well, boys, can the books be made available at your website, or if you have a telephone number to offer? Our website is AfricanAmericanImages.com, AfricanAmericanImages.com, and our toll-free number is 800-552-1991. But you had mentioned that you were going to try to make the books available through your network as well, and I don't want to prevent that from happening either.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to package it together with a copy of Hoodwink. You and I were both in the Jackson film with Marco Mahill, Steve Perry, and Ivory Tolson. Some guys that are just doing great work. And I'll tell you, the thing I loved about being a part of Hoodwink, and I'm going to be honest, Dr. Kunjufu, when James reached out to me, I told him no initially because I just, you know how it is, you get busy, and I don't like to do that many interviews. And he told me, when he mentioned that you were in it, that really got me. When he mentioned Mark was in it, that got me because Mark is one of my best friends. And then when I saw the final product, I felt almost embarrassed by the fact that I gave him such a hard time, because what I loved about the film, man, was I loved the idea of black men standing up for black men. It wasn't, it wasn't us waiting for the Democratic Party to do something good for us or for liberals or anybody. It was us standing up for us, and that just inspired the heck out of me. So it was an honor to be a part of that project, I tell you.
Well, keep up your work, boys, and let's stay in touch.
Absolutely, my friend. Thank you very much for your time, and for those of you who are listening, thank you all for checking us out at yourblackworld.com, and until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.